Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. In this episode, I spoke with Jane, the founder of Random Dialogues. So, naturally, we had a bit of a random conversation. I hope you enjoy it. And as always, thank you for your support. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. How are you doing today?
Hello, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And you and I actually have a couple of connections because we were just talking before I started recording. We know a couple of mutual people, which is it's a bit random, and as often that's a nice little segue then into Random Dialogues, isn't it? And you can tell us all about that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me along. Well, everyone has a story, and everyone perhaps would like to share that story at some point and doesn't always have the opportunity to do so. So Random Dialogues was set up to give people a voice so that they could have a platform to talk. And it sort of evolved in different ways because it's random, and that was the whole point. It was almost to create something from the nothing. And that was kind of one of the elements to have speaking events. So every other month, I have a platform on StreamYard where I live stream, and I have 6 speakers, 6 minutes each, or up to 6 minutes each for 60 minutes with time for quick fire Q&A. And that's where we've got to at the moment. And I've kind of been documenting when I'm in the mood for admin. I've documented, and things are live streamed everywhere. And I have fits and starts of doing the typing and stuff. But yeah, so we've had over 50 people now speak.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
What gave you the idea to start it?
I'm doing quite a lot of networking, really, and something I really enjoy, and realising that when you're out and about, people can't always articulate what they do. Yeah. I'm a hairdresser. I'm a coach. Yeah. I'm a physio. And I mean, I'm being quite generalist, but often people don't.
That happens though, doesn't it?
Passionately about it either. And it was sort of born out of, I think the best thing you can do to share what you do, to share what you love, what you do, is to get out and talk about it.
Yeah, I understand. One of the reasons that I started a podcast, apart from just having a general nosiness about people and who they are and what their story is because of this belief that I have that if somebody has a passion and you listen, they're interesting for at least half an hour.
Yeah.
Because they're passionate.
And it's not about being it's quite important that it's not about being a professional speaker.
No, you could collect rulers and stationery. But if you're passionate about it and the other person is prepared to listen to the passion, you'll find there's a fascinating topic there and a fascinating conversation, even if it's just what drives that person to have the passion about the thing. It could be anything. Yeah.
And it's about speaking from the heart about that passion, and Random Dialogues often becomes a springboard for other things. It's probably like coming onto your podcast here. We have these conversations and we get clearer on something and we go in twists and turns that we didn't expect, and then it's a catalyst. And we've had speakers go on to do TEDx talks, TED Talks, write books. So ours was like a catalyst platform.
It is, isn't it? Because I think most people are pretty terrible at self-presentation. They want it's just little old me, but little old you has achieved some incredible things. I remember listening to Dame Kelly Holmes about a month ago, and they were talking to her about the gold medals she won, and she was explaining that now she doesn't really understand who that person was, and she actually almost sees that person as not her anymore. And you're just like, that's crazy, because that was those 2 races were a defining moment in your life that also helped define Britain's part in the Olympics on that occasion. But it's like it happened to her so long ago that she talks it down, and she's just like, wow. And people do that in everyday life. People can do something completely miraculous, or like the cliche is they save somebody's life. But then you might find somebody that has been just randomly for 20 years just clearing up litter from the same patch of grass verge on their way home every day because they just like it. They don't like litter or whatever, and they'll talk about it like it's a nothing.
Yeah, and the nothing is the something, isn't it?
It is.
It's the if we were to talk sort of niche, I suppose, people who kind of make successes out of those small things, it's possible because it's often, it's the thing you're doing that is the thing.
Yeah. So you said this came from networking, and you noticed people weren't very good at describing their businesses and what they were. Why were you interested?
I've just always been interested in people's stories, and that's my thing. And I've had a passion, lifelong passion, in I think similar to what you're doing. What makes people tick. I studied psychology at university with education, and
Yeah,
it's
there
just
is
that.
something in there because, like I was saying to you, I work with head injuries, but I'm also a qualified hypnotherapist because
Yes,
I'm the way the mind works fascinates me. It's just the observation of people fascinate me because, and you're probably aware of this yourself. You can have two people experiencing the same thing, and their perspective of it will be completely different, and you just
that's right, and that's the sort of NLP side of life, isn't it? The
yeah
map of the world, the filter on the world. And I think that's quite important to know that I
yeah
like that aspect of NLP that there's, we have different filters and you've got to put yourself in other people's shoes. And yeah,
yeah. There was
I'm just,
there's something about it. Did you have this passion for people when you were a child?
I think I did. I've always loved being around people. And my father had a shop in Putney,
Yeah,
and I was sort of brought up as a bit of a Saturday girl. About age 11, I used to travel up on a Saturday with him, go to the shop. We'd have people working in the back, Uncle Les and Ted and Dave, and then I'd be in the shop with my dad doing cleaning jobs like cleaning out washing machine and fridge freezers and making teas and serving customers. And I just liked being in that community around
yeah.
people.
What sort of shop
At the
was
same
it?
time, I really loved. It was an electrical shop.
Oh wow, that would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean,
So at one point, I had my own little table, like selling, I think, not Nintendos, but some sort of gaming thing, like I had a little stall
Atari
for
or something
myself
it
in
would have
the
been.
shop. Yeah, yeah. And I'd go and get sausage rolls for lunch for all, or go down the sweet shop, and I just loved that independence at a young
Yeah.
age of travelling up there. And I suppose, that kind of gave me that experience and
Well,
just being around people. But I also really loved being on my own. I really crave being on my own at times, and I kind of love solitude, and I like that choice of being with people and being without people.
yeah,
And I'm quite happy
because
to go off and travel with a backpack around the world. And
yeah, I've never been much for that, to be honest. But I'll get into that in a second. Well, it's when you mentioned the reason I asked for the shop is because it's interesting. It's an electric shop because people can't understand today because you get things like Curry's PC World and stuff. It's just this big, vast, open space. Just what a little treasure trove those old electric shops were. Because you'd have
I can still
TVs.
smell it.
Yeah, you could, and it's something I'd describe of. There'd be some workshop in the back that had smells that were clearly were useful smells. Do you know what I mean? It'd be oils and cleaners and stuff. Everything had a use, and it would be like this menagerie of just environments all on one work desk.
Absolutely. And then Uncle Les would be smoking his woodbines.
Yeah,
That would permeate the shop, smoking in the shop.
yeah.
It was a normal thing to do.
You'll
And
never convince me it wasn't a better time. No one has ever
it was
convinced.
lovely. No, it was really magical. And of course, everyone used to come to the shop because they wanted
Yeah,
to talk to Dad. And at one point, I think he tried to expand it, but like you just said, he always struggled with it because of the out of town stores.
yeah,
Then they decided to put double yellow lines in front of the shop.
yeah,
Everything that possibly could go against a small business owner went against him, and it was never very successful as such. But for Dad, he never wanted to work for anybody. He wanted that, and I think having that shop allowed him to be quite creative. He could do different hustles, and at one point we had videos with
yeah,
VHF and Betamax, and then someone else was getting with their music shop that had been there for years, and he had space to put a music shop in one side of the shop,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it was like a little department store its own way.
It
So
was because people couldn't imagine. If you go to London today, you can't imagine London in the 70s and the 80s, and even to a certain degree the 90s, where the places like, especially Putney, would have very much a community village feel to it, even though it's right in the centre. I mean, was Putney Zone 1 or was it right on the edge of Zone 2 and 1?
Don't know actually.
But
SW15.
it's central London as far as, for me,
Yeah.
it would be central London. And people don't understand that, like, Clapham, Putney, and those areas would have a wonderful, amazing village feel about them.
It did. I can just remember 0208 788 5742. Just remember the phone number as well. And you pick up the phone and go, hello, Andrews.
Yeah.
It did. And you absolutely knew everybody around there. And that's what I mean, sort of going to the news and going to the sausage roll shop. It was just a little, and I felt really safe as a child to be able to sort of do that independence. Whereas I was living in a very small little village, there was nothing there. It was very kind of quite isolated village where I lived, and to have that hustle and bustle just felt good,
London. I remember London in the 80s. I used to go to East London a lot in the 90s. I had a girlfriend whose family was from Bethnal Green, so I spent a large amount of time up there in the 90s, and it was just phenomenal. Absolutely amazing time to be up there.
And I also go to my mother-in-law's quite often. She lives in Streatham.
Yep, I know it very well. I used to live round the corner at crikey, I forgot where I lived. Crown Point is the junction.
Okay, so she's near St Leonard's.
No, West. I'm gonna look it up a second while we're talking. Keep talking.
Yeah, so I go there still, and I go there and I call them #Streatham holidays, and I just love going to stay with Nanny Jill. I love going up to London again, just that access, and I've got membership at the Tate, so I go up to London and just hop on it takes me up to London Bridge. It's 20 minutes from hers, so yeah, that's still, I think it's still for me that kind of feeling.
West Norwood. I used to live at West Norwood. How could I forget where I used to live? It's right round the corner. I literally was a 5-minute walk from Stratton Common.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing when you forget where you live. And but I lived there for a couple of years, from about 2000 to 2002, I think. And it was definitely a great time. And so you mentioned you quite like your solitude and traveling around the world. Have you done much then?
Yeah, and again, when I was working with Dad, he had quite a lot of mindset and coaching books, I think, which is kind of interesting that you're into mindset coaching.
Very
and
much so.
I had shelves of books, and one of the books he did bring me up on was the Think and Grow Rich book by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, I know.
Which I think was the founding sort of personal development book from most things have been written from since. And he did teach me about goal setting, and one of my values, or three of my values, are vision, vitality, and voice.
Yeah.
And I set a goal to travel and save money to travel. And he travelled in Australia when he was a youngster. He'd gone in the 60s as a £10 pom. And I knew that I wanted to go to Australia. So I saved money throughout working with him, then had lots of different jobs. I've always had lots of different jobs, lots of hustles. And I think I was about 19 when I finally bought the ticket, put the backpack on, and off I went for a 15-month adventure.
Oh, nice. Did you follow on anywhere after Australia, or did you come back to England?
So I did I was never really alone. There was always that choice of being alone or travelling with others that I met along the way, because I was staying in hostels, so it's super easy. So we did the kind of Southeast Asia route back. I think I flew out eventually from Thailand. I think that's where I came from.
Nice. Do you get to do much now?
Again, going to little holidays like Streatham for me. We did have a 2-year adventure in Tanzania.
Oh, right, fantastic.
So when my children were 8 and 6, again, I wrote in my little book that my children play out freely, that we live in a quirky house and we have an amazing view. And a few months later, just through interviews and setting that intention, we ended up I taught in Tanzania at an international school. I'm a teacher by trade.
Okay.
And we had a view of a volcano. It wasn't Mount Kilimanjaro, it was Mount Meru. my children had like this amazing campus to run freely on. So we had enclosure and we were surrounded by coffee plantations. We had a housing area where all the teachers lived with kids. And yeah, and our house was quirky. It was sort of like this real concrete, basic house that we kind of made our home for 2 years.
So just something you said there that I picked up on as I caught my foot on the cable of the mic again, as discussed earlier, is you said the word a couple of times about setting intentions. So that is, for people that don't know, a kind of part of the Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich. What have you developed it into?
Setting intentions.
Well, the whole process.
So the values sort of based on my values now, I suppose. Yeah, vision, vitality, voice, 3 Vs.
Yeah, but because they kind of like they could be described as prompts or brand values to the process. But what is the process to you?
I'm not quite sure, but I think what you mean, like just in how to intention set, or what it means to?
Yeah, because some people will call it manifesting, some people call it intention setting, some people call it goal setting, and I'm always interested in so like an example, and this is just a personal example. And last year I got to the point with the podcast where it was becoming a massive struggle to get guests, to the point that it'd been like a couple of months in between each guest, and I was just like, this is getting really, really hard for something that's not monetized and takes up quite a large amount of time. People will be surprised how long these things take to set up and record and edit and post and the work that goes into them. And I don't know what made me do it. I just started writing in a book, just a blank book, on a page a day. The David Watson podcast is getting bigger and bigger every day, and that's all I wrote. I'm going to say within a few weeks, some random publicist in New York contacted me via email saying, would I talk to an author? I was like, yeah, love to. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, no idea how you know who I am. And that then, I don't know how these publicists, because they don't work for the same companies, they all work for different people. They all seem to be New Yorkish based. They don't seem to know each other. And that was about October, and by the end of October I was fully booked until the end of January the following 2024. And I then in January had people like Deborah. I think she hit me up around March time, but I'd already been hit up by a company that's like, oh, we're always looking for podcast hosts and stuff like that. And now in theory, I mean, I'm fully booked now, I think until July. I might have a couple of spaces left, I don't know. But in theory, there's one website that I'm on, and there's like, they send me a spreadsheet every week. There's enough guests on there for me to do 2 podcasts a week for about 2 years.
And then you need to outsource to get someone to do the admin for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do play with that idea. So, because I'll ask you about that in a minute, because you do social media, don't you? And
I do different things, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll ask you about that in a minute. But yeah, so I don't know where I fit with that in my own mind. I know what I did, but it's not the first time I've done it, but it's the first time it's been so successful. So I wonder how much of it comes. Yeah. So like I said, I'm a supporter of setting intentions, manifesting, whatever you want to call it, journaling, goal setting. I don't. You can put whatever label you want to put on it. All I can say is I've done it in the past with 0 success. I did it this time, and it's blown me away. Just like,
yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, I find goal setting quite hard. I think it's quite. If someone says, "What are your goals?" I find that really hard. I've sort of like had various discussions along the way around goal setting, and I quite like, the intention setting, and putting an energy behind something. And I really like just writing down what I'd like rather than just worrying too much about what it is. I find that the easiest thing. I'm like, what do I like? Just don't worry too much about what it is. Just write it down. And when I'm clear, things do seem to happen much more. Things happen, and I think meditation helps with that, and just being in a better flow and better energy state. I'm not always doing it. Good to come on here to have this conversation. Makes you kind of reflect on things.
I do notice if I miss that daily practice of it, my life seems to go off in a different direction.
Yeah.
And for myself, shit, I haven't written anything today, and I don't know whether I've nothing against the manifesting energy idea of things. Do you know what I mean? Funnily enough, I was doing hypnosis this morning to somebody who's a Reiki healer, and I was saying that once upon a time I used to do crystals and crystal healing and all of that and stuff, but I kind of just stopped because I got sick and tired of the labels and the things that follow with it. Because I'm quite happy as a person to sit down and say, I can't explain why something works, but this is what happened. Ironically, for somebody that's obsessed with why the mind is the way it is, I don't have to have an answer for everything, as long as it's not connected to my mind.
Yeah. And I'm not one for going around talking about manifestation. I don't practice it all the time. It's just I like to sort of think vision. Is there a vision here? How, is there a possibility to be created? Voice, has the person or whoever I'm working with, or have they got a voice? And vitality, to feel good, is this helping us feel? Is our energy raised as a result? And I mapped out, I was doing some work on resilience, and I mapped out different resilience models, and my VVV fits with every time. I kind of thought, there's vision, there's vitality, there's a voice in that model.
Yeah, that's.
And then someone told me years ago, make up your own models. There's so many models out there. There's so many coaching models. What's yours? What's your own model? And I've been one. I like to make things up.
Yeah, my one when I'm coaching people is be honest about what you actually want. Like, stop bullshitting because you don't want to upset or offend somebody. And by that, what I mean is, some people actually want to be rich and famous. So be honest about it. If you're not going to be honest with yourself about it, you're never going to sit comfortably in your own skin with it. And if you're not, and I think at that point, so for me, the David Watson podcast gets bigger and bigger every day. That's acknowledging actually that is what I want. I want a full-blown, full-time podcast. That becomes my full-time job.
Nice. Yeah.
So, but it was acknowledging that actually, if I'm really honest, that's what I'd love to do.
Yes. Right.
Whereas some people, no, it's just for fun. Oh no, if it gets money, if it does this, it'd be nice. No, I'd love it. And it was just actually sitting in that energy or that feeling, and the gratitude of kind of, do you know what? I actually would like that.
And you've got a brilliant voice for this as well, haven't you? You're really cool at it. It's like, it is. I can see you do it. It is your thing.
Thank you. No, that's very kind of you. I'm a bit blushy now. But it was, and I say that to clients when I'm coaching, and it's one of the things because of NLP and stuff. When I'm talking to people about hypnosis, like today, I was doing 2 people who wanted to lose weight, and I said to both of them, why? And I don't mean explain it to me, but you have to understand why you really want to lose weight. Because it's different for everybody. Some people, they just have to be honest about. I don't like looking fat, and I don't like the look of fat people, and I prefer it when I'm skinny, because I don't care if I'm supposed to be beautiful on the inside. I don't feel it, but I do when I can fit into that dress I like. Right? Yeah. Be honest about that. Don't be ashamed of it. Be honest, because if you're going to sit in this kind of mental space of feeling guilty about something that would actually give you great joy, you're just in this vicious cycle of self-sabotage. And so I'm always like, be honest. And I think maybe that's why this worked for me this time, because I was actually honest about I want it to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So
should I say my intention for dialogues?
Yes.
I'd like to. So it's 6 speakers format, 6 minutes each, and it's tested. It's done. I've tried it and tested it. Like you, done it for free. Just done it. Thought, no, I'll show up. I'll keep doing it. And like you, it's been very hard to get guests. And this year has got easier. I'm finally getting more guests coming, and I feel like maybe it's just because people have got used to it and they're happy to come and talk. It was a bit like, what is that? It's because it's quite a vulnerable thing. Come and talk, to speak on it. and I've got someone who I've been working with, and someone else was trying to talk about branding and branding me and branding branding it, and someone else said no, change the model a bit more. So go and get a test case, go into a corporate and get a test case with it. So I'd like to get my foot in the door somewhere where I can have people inside the organisation experiencing it. Yeah. So 6 minutes each, sharing their story. It's a resilience boost. It's something a bit different. It's a team building experience. It's a feel good factor. So that's what I'd like to do with it. And that would be my way of perhaps leveraging it, monetizing it.
Yeah, because I think I don't know when we lost our voice, because people don't understand our voice is powerful in so many ways. And you don't, it's not about shouting it. It's just, I find that, I find it fascinating. And I've suffered from this. It's one of the reasons I challenged myself to do a podcast, is I realised I was getting nervous talking to random strangers. And it's just like, okay, we'll start a podcast. And I'd become worried about what people thought about me. And I was just like, how did you get into this headspace where you're concerned about what a random stranger might think about you? It's like, well, it's like, what happened to you? When did this happen? And so that was, then it was just as much as anything, like it was about just random dialogues and finding my voice, and at the same time practicing that, just being comfortable to do what you and I are doing now, which is, just as simple as a little girl in a shop serving a customer a radio, or a washing machine answering an inquiry. But where, at some point we seem to have lost our voice.
And it's not about being the most confident speaker in the room. It's not about being the CEO of the company. It's about being the grey wolf, the ones who don't have the opportunity, and the quieter ones often have the most to say and the most intelligent thing to say, but often not the ones that speak up. So it's providing that platform, just like you've done today, for just come and talk, and either like Q&A format like this, or just to have like something scripted where they might sort of like have some hobby, something sort of a bit out there.
Yeah, but it's
something that they enjoy, that they didn't realize was something they could talk about.
Because I wrote a book many years ago, and I speak to a lot of authors, and it's really difficult for people that have never written a book to understand that when we say you just have to write it, we literally mean just start writing. None of it has to make sense. Stop trying to make it make sense, and just get that first draft down. And just understand that in 6 weeks, when you reread that first draft, you're going to question with every ounce of your soul, what on earth was I trying to write? But there'll be snippets in that and pieces in that piece together, that you will form into a longer dialogue, or a longer sort of essay, and it becomes a book. Quite different.
What's your book called?
My book was called, is called 22 Flaws, and it's a book on reincarnation from the perspective of somebody that commits suicide, and how their soul reincarnates.
I went on a mental health training a couple of years ago, youth mental health training, and something I learned was, we say commit suicide. But the language they're wanting us to use is complete suicide. Completed, because committed sounds like a crime. That's
such bullshit. As somebody that nearly killed himself, it wouldn't make it.
So they say complete suicide. There's a kind of PC.
Yeah, I have big issues with things like this, because what I discovered. So just for reference, I was sitting on a platform in Earls Court train station, contemplating which train to jump in front of. Right, and there's no big drama. I just suddenly realised it's like it's not who you are. It's not going to happen. The problem with that, and it wasn't a solution, because I'd invested a huge amount of time in self-loathing and hating myself, and I had no idea how to get out of that hellhole, that hole. Do you know what I mean? But it gave me a huge insight into what people who commit suicide are going down, because at some point I was fortunate that I didn't follow the spiral any further, but it probably took me at least 10 years to get to a place where I was comfortable in my own skin, because I self-loathed and hated myself so much that I daily looked in the mirror and wanted to kill myself. So when people say, yeah, completed, because we don't want to, no, it doesn't, for the people that happens to, it doesn't matter. And when I say I self-loathed, and after that, I still ended up getting in trouble with the law. I still ended up bankrupt.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Destructive behaviour was just a necessity to numb the pain going on in my head.
And do you think, going back to the Kelly Holmes analogy, you know, that's almost like a part of you now that you can't recognise? You go, that was part of my story that's now not my story, and it's
a part of my story that I don't understand why, because hindsight's a wonderful friend. So it's very easy for me to look back at certain decisions and certain choices and like, you know, you weren't a fool, you were a smart guy. How did you make that choice? And I realised that it's not a single answer, it's a combination of events. And it's different for everybody, and mental health is a complex situation. But I would say predominantly it started long before I'd ever had any problems with just not a great relationship with my father. Not having and the reason I say it doesn't apply for everybody, because some people are quite happy if their brain's not occupied, whereas some of us, that drives us literally crazy. And I didn't have a passion, and I didn't have a prominent male figure that was positive.
Yes.
And I say that because I had an uncle who was great at looking after us. He also went to prison twice. But he was a fantastic person to be around in terms of the attention that he gave you and took you places and dragged you places. But when you're 14, there's some places you shouldn't be going.
Yeah.
And so influences is a big thing. But then this idea that I didn't know right from wrong, no, I knew exactly what I was up to. I knew exactly what I was doing. I'd had zero capacity to give a shit about the law. That's for other people to follow. You know, that's how you end up in trouble. But I just didn't have a positive influence who could help me navigate what I needed to learn in the world. And it'd be different for different people, but for me, the two things that stood out is because I didn't have a passion to follow, boredom required me to entertain myself. And because I didn't get on, me and my dad didn't really see eye to eye, and he wasn't somebody that I looked up to, although he was somebody I wanted affection from. There wasn't a positive male model to just guide me, because a female influence wasn't going to be any good, because it's not what I was seeking. You know, but for another man, that might have been the solution, but it wasn't for me, because it's not what I was seeking. Because my mum was very good in that area, but it just, you know, it's almost like you don't crave what's on your own plate. You crave what you don't have. And so then as I got older and sort of left home, had a relationship that went sour, you know, sold a house and all of that. I was kind of left in that spot again of, well, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? Yeah. And because I hadn't had a positive role figure who demonstrated, like, well, actually, if you do this for 5 years, you might achieve this, with long-term goals and focusing on practices and stuff like that, things that don't sabotage you but actually build you. Self-sabotage was an easy goal, you know. So, and of course, you then, when you go into businesses, even though you might be phenomenally good at what you do, you clash with those above you, because you don't have any respect for that authority, because you've not had a positive authority to lead you anywhere.
Interesting. And I think from, you know, the studies I've done on the resilience, even if you've come from a background where you maybe have no parenting at all, no sort of like solid parents, if there's just that one significant adult in your life, it can make a huge...
Just has to be a significant adult. that
Yeah, and
helps.
I think particularly for boys,
Yeah.
and I know that for my own son, it might, he's 19 now. We have a solid relationship. We've got a father around, but I still, at the same time, I knew this, and I said to my husband, it might not be you right now that is his mentor. He might need someone else in his life. So we've got to kind of put our egos out of this and our attachment, and find just be aware that there's other male models needed here right now at some point in his life.
It is, and it is, because I remember I had a teacher, Mr. Mumford, and he was fantastic for me at school. But then I left school. He was my head of year for a few years, and even when he was no longer head of year, he still kept an interest in me. And even though I got into trouble at school, he had a way of talking to me that just made me feel like I'd let him down, and that I could have done better in myself. And and like I said, I do need to caveat that with mental health, it's different for everybody, but I recognise in hindsight the things that were important to me, and the things that weren't in my environment that I needed. But for somebody else, it could be completely different. That's not the support they need.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing to acknowledge. I think one of the things, which is why I like podcasts, and one of the things I do like about the internet, is people can now explore the internet and find answers that resonate with them. And you can see that there's nuances to this, and patterns of behaviour, and patterns to the solutions as well. Whereas in the 90s and the early noughties, when this was happening, the internet didn't exist. So I didn't even know who to go and talk to, who to have a conversation with.
Actually, on the back of what we've talked about, it might be good in the write-up for this to put some signposting, just in case anyone watching this and they sort of feel like, actually, that I'm in that situation, or I know someone in that situation. Maybe we could put some sort of like reference and ideas.
I don't know what signposting is. What is it?
Someone told me off for that the other day. They're like, don't like that word, signposting.
No. This is why I said to you, because this is the important thing about social media and marketing. Because although I do a lot of social media and marketing, there's lots about it I just have no idea what it is.
I don't even know if it's sort of like social media marketing. It's more me just sort of thinking, if I was watching this and I was a young person or a parent, and I'm thinking, I'm feeling like this, and this is a really, everything you've just shared just really resonates with me. What do I do now? I'm feeling like this. Who do I turn to? I've got, is there any organisations out there I can help me with this? Is there anyone can offer me some sort of hand holding to find something, or is there a phone number I can call? So it just might be worth in the write up afterwards, just putting that in.
Yeah. Is there anyone you suggest?
Well, again, I could look through that we were given a pack on our mental health first aid training with, sort of like some numbers and links and stuff to look through. Would help people.
Yeah, no. So when you're not doing random dialogues, what else do you do?
So I have written a book about random dialogues, and I worked with a coach called Fraser Hay to help write the book. So we had brought our skill set together. I'm good at partnering with people with ideas, and it's called Business Networking Beyond Small Talk. So I've got a book which looks like this.
And we'll make sure that link to that is in the description.
Thank you. And I'm a teacher by trade. So I also like talking, and I want to write a book. I feel there's a book about portfolio careers.
Yeah.
And I feel, I'm 52, that I'm almost living now what my children are going to be living, their generation's going to be doing. There isn't the traditional 9 to 5. You're already, you kind of doing this, but you want to do other things. And we realise that actually we can have income streams coming in, we can earn money, but also follow our passions, follow the things we love to do on the side. And those things on the side then become the things that pay the bills.
No, I agree. I do think that, I don't know what's an advantage or disadvantage, but I do sometimes get frustrated when I see teenagers, and it's just like, you don't realise the opportunity the internet is to you, and that utilised correctly, you don't have to be the face, but if you just learn networking skills, you will learn what problems people want solved, then go and solve those problems, and you could have a thriving business. Or it could be anything. You could have a wonderful YouTube channel on how to collect daisies. There'll be enough people out there that are interested if you're an interested person. Or, like I said, you could just have a skill set that you could learn from going to networking, and just share that.
And that's what we've tried to do in the book. And I think you can't underestimate the power of community, the power of connections. because you just don't know where conversations will lead to. And it's just making sure that in some ways when you have those random conversations that there's a bit of a follow-up sometimes, because you can maybe lose those people, that's fine, but there just might be a way of, what have you got that's a way of staying connected. I have a newsletter that I write every week called Random Dialogues. I try and publish it on Fridays at 6:08 a.m. I do the 6:08 a.m. for a bit of fun.
Yeah.
And it's just something I'm doing consistently around the different things I do. I've got this platform where I write, and I have contributions, and a bit like a podcast where people can come and write and contribute to it.
So would that be a good place for people, because some people don't like the argument could be I love the sound of my own voice. So but there is, like, again, I think there's an unappreciated market for people who still love writing, who just but just like because I started long before I ever did podcasts. I used to write blogs about everything and anything.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's just I found it easier to talk.
Yeah. But, and they're quite short. They're quite short form things I do. And sometimes if someone's done a longer blog, I put the link in for the blog. I mean, this morning's podcast was about a friend's funeral I'd gone to at the natural burial ground. In fact, it was called Come to My Funeral, but actually he hasn't died. It was like a mock funeral to show how sort of beautiful and gentle a natural burial can be. Okay. So that was in there. And another friend, Yvette, she contributes. She was a former acupuncturist. She's retired now. She's an acupuncturist, very full of wisdom. And again, we've almost got 72 of those now from her. And that's a little book that'll come about, I'm sure, nice. From that.
So, because if somebody's listening, that's a great way to write a book. By the way, is just write lots of
short form.
That's what I did. I just the way I figured it out in my head, because I kind of already knew the beginning, I knew the end, because the beginning he commits suicide. So the end is the soul has to reincarnate. So it's like, okay, I've got the beginning, I've got the end. So I just have to write the middle. And I realised what was stopping me was I was trying to figure it out. And suddenly a thought popped in my head. It's just like, just write everything as if it's one short story. So just write the next short story. So I wrote a short story, and that was kind of loosely connected to it. And then, okay, right, now write the next one. Now write the next one. And eventually I ended up with like a load of short stories that combined into one long story. But it was getting outside of my head and literally just write a short story, and people don't realize that sometimes the best way to write a book is treat it like it's a weekly blog, and just try to do one blog a week, so you checking the time.
No,
I was going to say, because I am keeping an eye on the time. I haven't forgotten that you need to be finished by 5:30.
Oh, bless. No, I was just thinking, actually, I'm a bit of an agent, I suppose, for people. And, with Yvette, that we'll work out. We haven't quite worked that out yet, how to get that into a book, published. But we just thought, let's just write it. We both quite like the consistency every week. She started contributing. It helped me because she was contributing. It meant that it nudged me to do it. And then, I'll have occasional pieces come in from other people. And then I'll just sometimes just share. If I've seen something from somebody else, I'll share it in the newsletter as well.
This is the goal setting coaching side of me now. It's just like I think that would be a great 5-year plan, and the reason I say 5-year plan is because you probably have enough content to produce a book a week, and you could just call it a collection of random thoughts, and just have a book series called Random Thoughts. And like volume 1, volume 2, or, do you know what I mean? Or you could even say like volume 2024, then volume 2025, volume 2026.
Well, I suppose in its own way, it's a working website. The link, it is like that, isn't it? It's almost like a book. It's like a book, and people I've got randomly. I put it onto LinkedIn. And I now do training methods because I copy the content from the one on Beehive to LinkedIn. I just got into a system of doing it. It doesn't take me too long. And then the one on LinkedIn is like maybe got 520 subscribers now.
That's good.
In the last couple of months. Yeah, and I get like about 10 subscribers a week at the moment. And I think people go onto the profile and they do then head straight to that newsletter.
They do. One of the I was talking to a lady a couple of weeks ago, and her thing is she was crazy about Patrick Swayze. And I was just like, it's really random. So I was just like, I'm going to invite her on. And I want to know what it is. And it turns out she's madly crazy about Dirty Dancing. But she's in all these Patrick Swayze fan clubs. It's one of my most watched podcasts. because she put it in all of these fan club forums.
Well, yes.
And I was just like,
I love Patrick Swayze, but like, you know, I get that.
yeah. Do you know what I mean? So, and one of the things Harry and I were talking about is people do not understand what Patrick Swayze was in the 90s. You know, with Point Break, with Ghost, with Dirty Dancing, with Roadhouse, with Next to Kin.
He was incredibly talented. And he was
amazing.
You know, I read his sort of some of his background and about how his mum, you know, they were dancers. She brought him up as a dancer.
But I was explaining to her that because my sister was crazy about Dirty Dancing, but Patrick Swayze was one of the few sort of 90s movie stars, and there's never been many anyway throughout the movie history. He could be a proper romantic lead where he's soft like Ghost and Dirty Dancing, and he was also the bouncer, the doorman in Roadhouse. He was also the bad guy in Point Break, and he is one of the few people that women wanted to date and men wanted to be like. Like, he played different characters. If you think of all the different characters he played, like Next to Kin is a massively underrated film that he did, where he plays a hillbilly and one of his brothers gets killed, but he's a cop, so he kind of has to go sort of renegade. And not that I've watched it a few times, but but you actually want to be that older brother. You would love to be that older brother, or to have that older brother, you know. But guys actually wanted to be the lead in Dirty Dancing and be able to dance like he could.
Wow.
You wanted to look like him, to do what I mean, because he was also the surfer in Point Break who went robbing banks.
Wow, okay.
Do you know what I mean? So he was, for me, he was one of those actors that could transcend multiple roles and never lose his appeal. You know. So yeah, it turned into an amazing, fascinating story about Patrick Swayze.
I'll watch that one.
It turned out I was a bigger fan than I realised.
Yeah. Oh, he's lovely. And I'll find that and I'll put it into my newsletter, you know, things like that. I can put your podcast into the newsletter.
Oh, yeah, that'd be much appreciated, much appreciated. So
yeah, you can become a random dialoguist.
Yeah, I'll be another notch to add to the money I keep collecting. Because that's the thing. I know it's a bit pun intended, but it's the randomness that I love. It's the randomness that I appreciate. Because I never know. Because I talk to a lot of authors, and they like, have you read my book? Like, no. I said, I barely read any of it, because if I do, I'll lose curiosity to who you are.
Oh, okay.
So I'll sometimes get sent these massive press packs. Like, sometimes they're 10 pages long with questions you can ask and questions and what they will say.
Oh, you get some characters on, yeah.
Yeah, and I rarely read it. I'll scan it about an hour beforehand to see if there's anything I'm interested in, because I just don't want to know.
Be predetermined almost, yeah. Yeah,
because I understand my own thinking, and if I discover too much about you, well, why do I need to talk to you?
Yes, I'm the same. Literally last month when we had the show, I nearly cancelled it the day before. Suddenly a couple of people messaged, we coming on? I was like, all right then, so put it together. No one knew what they were going to really talk about, and we all got on, piled in, you know, and it was like, we're going live now.
That's something I think it's important to learn about yourself. Like, because when I first started, I started trying to research people. And then I realised it's like I was trying to be really professional, as if I knew what I was doing. And I just like, why are you trying to do that? You haven't got a clue what you're doing. You're literally figuring it out as you go along. And you're trying to learn how to talk to people. So just learn how to talk to people. Yes.
And make it up and make your own model. And I think that does come from confidence of, like, I think once you've got the tech sorted and you know which buttons to press and how to do it, and you've
sometimes I wonder. I will, when this finishes, the first thing I'll do is actually check it's recorded.
Yeah, because do you know what? Anyway, I'm not sure if something come up saying it's being recorded anyway.
I have a little red light on, but that doesn't actually tell me if it can hear you. I did check when you went off to get a drink. I was already recording to do a sound check, and everything's all right. But sometimes it will flash, and some of the podcasts, if you look at it, you can see I've flicked between the Zoom call and the actual OBS screen because something's flashed up, and I think it's stopped working. You know,
right,
that's
right.
my
You've
height.
got the proper gear.
That would be well. You say that most people, do you know what I mean, have two screens, but no, the height of my thing is mid podcast. I'll flick between two screens, and you disappear, I disappear, and like a monitor comes up telling me if it's working or not.
I don't even know if actually I'm using this proper mic, because it's meant to be at the Yeti mic, and I'm looking now thinking, am I actually logged on to the Yeti.
Yeah.
Your speaker's changed. The speaker's Yeti. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear you perfectly. I've been able
No,
to
I
hear
can't
you
hear
throughout.
you. That's a problem. Okay, here we go. I'm going to just put it back to where it was. No, it's a bit late to do a tech check now, and I'm halfway through.
Yeah, no,
middle of
it's
finishing.
been good throughout. But there's a mishap, a misrepresentation that I know what I'm doing. I don't. If it doesn't work, I actually don't know how to fix it. And I've had podcasts that I've had to cancel when we've logged on like to Zoom because they can't hear me and I don't know how to fix the problem for them. And I just all I can do is rebook, or we can both reboot our computers and start again. But if that doesn't work, it's But I am conscious of time, and I do need to let you go. So I have one last random question, which well, I asked this to pretty much everybody, and it's just a curiosity as much as anything, but it requires your imagination. If you could go any place in time, anywhere, anywhen, no restrictions, where would you go? Why would you go there? What car would you be driving, and what music would you be listening to?
Gosh, well, my mind's gone probably to Australia.
Yep.
Outback, old car, driving across like a bit of Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
Taking a travelling, glasses on, scarf in. 1960s. I quite like to go to when my dad was out in Australia at that time and just explore and just go on a road trip.
Yeah. And what would you be listening to?
The Eagles, if they
nice. Yeah. Yeah. So, as you said there's one last question, actually, that I don't always ask, but I will. You remember the girl that you were telling me about in the shop?
Oh, yes.
Right, that version of you who just travelled into Putney, has her little desk, selling little computers and stuff, and just somehow by random, you were able to talk to her. What would she tell you about the life you've had?
About the life?
Yeah, what would she say to you?
She'd say it was adventurous and random and that you've you've done it your way. I suppose. I don't know. That's hard. Oh, it's too on the spot.
That's right. You'll think about that tonight.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, that's a good question. And I've got like a Johnny Cash quote here, actually. It was when my dad passed away. My dad passed away 4 or 5 years ago, and we were really into he was really into Johnny Cash. So when he died, I got a Johnny Cash quote put there. And it's something like, in life, you have to be who you are. Whatever it is, you've got to be it. And it's about, I think it's about walking your own line, being yourself.
Would you say that's something you do well then?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And on that, thank you very much for your time. It's been really random, which has been brilliant and appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And there you have that episode with Jane. And it was, as promised, a random dialogue. I do hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, thank you very much for tuning in, for listening, for the support. It's always appreciated. And wherever you are from, whatever you believe, please take care and be blessed. Thank you.